Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the First-Time Homebuyer Information Session. My name is Kirsten. I'm from the Old First Ward Community Association, and I am the Community Development and Housing Services Specialist. Today, we're going to bring you some information on first-time homebuyer, processes and resources that are available. So it's presented by Old First Ward and Neighborhood Housing Services of South Buffalo, and we have presenters from M&T Bank and Belmont Housing Resources for Western New York. So with that, I will send it over to Tracy to get started.
Okay. Go ahead and share my. All right, well, welcome everyone. Hi, I'm Tracy Groves. I'm a HUD certified housing counselor at Belmont Housing Resources for Western New York. Belmont is a nonprofit housing agency. We've been in business since 1977 and employ over 100 associates that work toward expanding affordable housing opportunities in Erie and Niagara County. We provide many different services, including rental counseling, homebuyer counseling, financial and credit counseling, as well as landlord counseling. We have classes in financial education, as well as pre and post homebuyer workshops, foreclosure prevention, and reverse mortgage counseling. My job primarily is to work with first-time homebuyers. So you're here because you want to buy a home. There's a lot of good reasons to want to buy a home. Probably many reasons that many of you are all here today are very similar. But some real good reasons for wanting to buy a home would be that you have stable and secure income. You want some stability for your family. You can afford the monthly payment, as well as being able to afford to repair and maintain the home as needed. If you're able to take care of the home. If you have good credit and you manage your finances well, or if you just want a place to call your own that you can feel proud of. There's a lot of really good reasons to want to buy a home, and this is a very good time to try to seek that out. So you're ready to buy. Can you afford it? There is some financial assistance available. There are a few different types of assistance type programs out there. First of all, there are municipality first-time homebuyer programs, and they're going to talk about that after I'm done speaking for the city of Buffalo. There are bank products and programs out there, and Shelley Fryer is going to talk about that in terms of M&T. And Belmont also has a matched savings program for first-time homebuyers. So with the match savings program, it is a 2-to-1 match. You save either $1,000 or $1,500, and you get that match by 2. So in other words, you save $1,500 and you get a grant of $3,000 to add to it. You save $1,500, you have $4,500 when it's all said and done. To qualify, you have to be under the 80th percentile of medium income guidelines, and you have to be ready to purchase. You have to be mortgage ready. So your credit has to be in pretty decent shape, income, debt, things like that. Things that Shelley, I'm sure, are going to talk about when she's talking about what the lenders are expecting. It's a match savings program that you save for a minimum of 3 months, but you can save while you are shopping for a home. So it's not something incredibly long-term. It's a minimum of 3 months and a maximum of 12. You do have to be able to buy within 2 years, ideally within a year. The income guidelines, the 80th percentile, are here on the screen. For a one-person household, it's $44,200, and it increases as the number of people in the household increase. So what are you going to do first? What are the beginning steps of home ownership? Well, first things first, you want to look at your financial situation. You want to determine if your credit and your finances are all in order and are ready to go to buy a home. You can meet with a housing counselor if you need assistance with that. We can meet, we can get together, we can work out an action plan to help you get where you need to go. If you need someone to look at your credit, things like that, those services are absolutely available, and everything that we do is free. We don't charge a service for any of or charge a fee rather for any of our services. Once all of your finances are in order, then I recommend taking a homebuyer education class. And once you've taken the class, you can meet with a loan officer to get a pre-approval. After you get your pre-approval, that's when you really can start looking into applying for programs that you might qualify for. So some things that you might want to consider once you get that pre-approval. First of all, you want to review your budget. You want to determine what you feel that you can comfortably afford in a monthly payment, and make sure to consider all of the expenses, including utilities, taxes, upkeep and maintenance, all of those little costs that pop up on a monthly basis or yearly basis, whatever that may be. You want to find a realtor to help you shop for a home. You want to get help, certainly, especially right now in the market that we have. It's very, very important to get as much help as you can, and a realtor is a great way to do that. And finally, you want to make sure that you get a home inspection. It's important that you are comfortable with the condition of the home and that you get yourself educated about the home that you're looking to buy, and a home inspection is the way to do that. Some tips for being a smart consumer. First of all, do not overstate your income or your finances in any way. You need to be honest. When the loan officer is asking you questions, make sure that you answer them honestly. You're not hurting anyone but yourself if you're dishonest. You want to keep your budget in mind. You definitely don't want to borrow more money than you can afford to repay. Get educated, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Take classes, contact a counselor for help if you need it. And finally, make sure that you read everything carefully and ask questions. If you don't understand something, make sure that you ask questions. Find someone you trust, a housing counselor, an attorney, somebody to help you understand it. If you don't understand something, you should never sign something until you're sure you understand it. So to sign up for a homebuyer class, you want to go to our website, which is www.belmonthousingwny.org. You want to click on the classes tab at the top of the page, and then choose whichever class you're interested in and click on it. Once you click on it, a list of upcoming dates and times will appear, and you can register for the class right online. Because of COVID right now, we are still teaching classes regularly every week, but our classes are being held virtually via Zoom rather than in person for safety reasons. Hopefully, at some point, COVID will end and we will go back to in-person classes, but for right now, all of our classes are being held virtually via live Zoom webinar. So, if you want a little bit of help, who can you speak with? Well, if you need further financial budgeting, budget counseling, more financial assistance, Art Taggart would be the best person to speak with. He is at 884-7791, extension 123, and I also have his email address listed. Or if you are ready to move forward and you just have questions about home ownership, or you want to help get an action plan together, I'm the right person to speak with. And my number is 884-7791, extension 131, and my email address is listed here as well. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it on to Shelley Fryer to talk about the different programs and products that the banks have to offer. So thank you.
All right, so there's a little bit of overlap, of course, because Tracy laid the groundwork. So I will gloss through the beginning of this. But first, I'm Shelley Fryer from M&T Bank's Mortgage Division. I have been working with first-time home buyers for a long time. It has been my passion and my focus to help first-time home buyers find, make their dream come true of owning a house. And so yes, as considering buying a house, it is important that you work with a lender that knows a lot about first-time home buying. And I'm going to help you a little bit with understanding what it takes on the mortgage side to make that dream come true. So first of all, Tracy already spoke about this a little bit with the pros or cons of home ownership and all of the things that you want to think about. Homes have value, obviously. And the thing we're seeing now in our market is that people who bought a house, 5-10 years ago have a lot of extra value in that house. They're astonished to find out how much it's worth now because because the market is so hot. So that's a huge reason that a lot of people like to buy houses, because they know that maybe it will help them build wealth and they'll be able to better care for their household, their family. Pros and cons of making payments. Well, you have to have a large payment every month, but if you're paying rent, that is so flexible and you don't have any control over that, whereas you do have control over the mortgage payment. You know what it's going to be. and it's predictable, whereas rent is not predictable. It's very unpredictable, in fact. Paying taxes, well, you have to pay taxes any way you look at it. If you're paying rent, you're paying the taxes for that landlord. It's built into your rental payment. So pro or con, you know, it is what it is. And then of course, remodeling your home, which is great because when you're renting, you don't really have a lot of control over what you can do to the property, right? So here's kind of that encapsulated for you. You can see there are pros and cons to all of these things. And so these are things you want to think about as you are deciding what you want to do. And if you want to buy a house, just like Tracy said in her portion, you know, what are your goals? What's important to you? And if you've weighed the pros and cons and decided that it's time, this is where we all come in, okay? So just a couple of general terms to get acquainted with when you're buying a house. The things that are most important, right, are your income, your employment history, things like that. That's huge, right? Because you really need to prove that you have the ability to make a mortgage payment. And the way to do that is to show that you've got, you know, your employment is predictable. You know, you have a pretty good job. You've been working full time for at least 2 years. Most mortgages, anywhere you go, are going to require a 2-year work history. Okay, so that's just something that you want to plan on. If you've only been working part-time, or you've got a couple of different kinds of part-time gigs going on at the same time, if you just quit your job and decided to become self-employed, those are things that are very important. So when you want to make decisions about that, it is a good idea to talk to the loan officer, talk to a lender, and see how your employment changes might affect your ability to buy a house. I had somebody who was buying a house. He worked at a car dealership, and he'd been there for years, and he was pre-approved to buy a house. And then he got this fantastic promotion, but the promotion was to become one of the salespeople. And guess what happened? He no longer qualified, because if you are a salesperson getting paid only at a commission, you don't have a consistent income history until you've got a 2-year history of receiving that commission. So we know how to predict how much you're going to earn. Okay, so things like that are very important. And so making sudden changes is a bad idea until you've talked to somebody about it first. Make sure that you're making smart moves. Okay, you've done something for several years and you decide you want to start your own business doing this thing instead of working for this other company. Well, if you're going to become self-employed, you have to have at least 2 years of tax returns doing that business before you can buy a house. Okay, so these are important things that you want to think about when it comes to your income and your income history. That's all very critical. The same thing with your income. Don't think that you can't buy a house just because you have maybe Social Security, disability income, or something like that. You can. Okay, so it's just good to get acquainted with all of that. Debt to income ratio is something that you will hear a lot about when you're talking to a lender, because in modern times, it's become important that we keep a tight watch on that debt to income ratio. Okay, so what that is how much you're paying every month compared to how much money you're making. Okay, so if you're making, you know, you can even get an idea of what your debt to income ratio is by looking at how much you make every month and looking at maybe 40% of that. Okay, so 40% of your gross income every month. Get that figure, multiply it times 0.4, okay? And then look at what you're paying every month. What's your car payment? What do you have to pay in student loans? Your credit card minimums. And the difference between that is how much money you have to pay a mortgage, okay? So that is a really simplistic way of looking at it, but it's a really useful tool, because you can say, because a lot of times people are like, I have no idea what I can afford. If I have to make a payment work, I make it work, you know, and they don't really know that. But what your debts are is very important, okay? So be careful, especially if you're gonna maybe go buy a new car. Ask a loan officer that you're working with, how would this affect my pre-approval? I don't have a car payment now, but I'm spending a lot in car repairs, right? But that's not verifiable by the lender, right? So we don't know how much you're paying in car repair, but for you, it might be less expensive to take on a new car payment, but we have to add that car payment to what you're paying out every month, and then that reduces what your mortgage can be. So if you have a $220 monthly payment, or if you have a $420 monthly payment for your car, makes a huge difference in how much you can. That's a $40,000 swing in what you can afford when you buy a house. Okay, so it's important that you pay attention to those numbers and talk to somebody about that. Make sure you're making a good decision and a good choice. A lot of times people get locked into a 5-year car loan, and then they can't buy a house for 5 years, or they have to sell the car. So make smart choices from the beginning, and that's why you're watching this, right? Is because you're getting educated right from the very beginning, so you can avoid a lot of the common pitfalls that prevent people from buying houses. Your credit score, super important. You can find out your credit scores a lot of times. If you have a credit card, you can get a free score from them every month. You can get a free credit report. The government allows you to get a free credit report every year. It doesn't give you the scores, but it tells you all the stuff that's on there. So if you have a bunch of problems on there, you need to get those cleaned up. But a great way to find out your credit score is to try to get pre-approved for a mortgage. We'll pull your credit. You don't have to pay for the credit report, and you get your scores, and we can suggest, what kinds of things you might need help with, what things would be a problem, what things you want to address, and all of that. To get educated. And then of course your down payment, that's how much money you're going to need to put down on the purchase of the house. When you buy a house, you always have to put some money down. You don't get 100% financing unless you're a veteran generally. So if you haven't served your country, you have to put some money down. Okay. So it might be 3%, it might be 5%. But those are general terms that you're going to want to know as you go through the preparing to buy a house. So specifically about credit score, what you want to pay attention to is not paying anything 30 days late. Okay. You might have to wait for your next paycheck. It might be 2 weeks late in order to make that payment, but don't let it go 30 days late. If you're 30 days late, it automatically goes on your credit report, and it's going to be a problem. It's going to drop your scores by a lot. Okay. How much you owe. Obviously that's important. If you're drowning in debt, your credit score is going to be lower, right? So try not to get in a position where you have a lot of debt from the get-go. And I know that's totally easier said than done, right? I mean, we're in a pandemic and all kinds of crazy things are going on in the world. And so, it's not easy to stay out of debt, but try your best. One of the things that they look at is how much credit you're using compared to how much you have available to you. So you might have a card with a $300 credit limit. Okay. Well, you go out to Target one time, you haven't been there in 2 months or something, and you get groceries, and you get all your paper products, you get all that junk, dog food, the whole 9 yards, and a few things for you, of course, too, right? Well, you come out of there and you just charge $250. Well, you just went from having a better credit score to a lower credit score, because when they report that, you're using almost the max of that credit line. And it wouldn't be a big deal if it was a $10,000 credit limit, but because you have a $300 credit limit and you just almost maxed it out, they're just looking at the numbers. They're not looking at the details. They're looking at the percentage. So a percentage of a $10,000 credit limit, well, a $300 charge at Target would be no big deal, but it's almost all of that $300 credit limit. And it actually makes your credit score go down if you don't have a lot of credit or a lot of credit history. So be very careful to try to keep those things down. You want to try to keep them under 30% of the credit limit. So it's a really good idea to start out with your littlest cards and just pay them down. And then take it out of the wallet, put it away for now, get to the next one, pay that one off, get it out of your wallet, okay? And so forth, so that you are you're not using so much of your credit, and your scores will immediately react to that. It's a really great way of boosting your scores. And then not having people pull your credit all the time. So just be careful whenever you go run around, you go to the mall and you apply for a credit card at each store you go to, because they're all offering you 20% and it's back to school shopping or something. All of those credit inquiries are going to have an effect on your credit score. So don't run around having everybody pull your credit. It needs to be important for them to pull your credit if you're thinking about buying a house, okay? So that's generally everything that I have for you on credit. There's a lot to learn about credit, but that's the tip of the iceberg. All right, then home buying costs. There are three major factors when you're buying a house that you want to consider. A lot of people think, well, I've got $3,000 in the bank, so I can buy probably a $100,000 house. I've got a 3% down payment. What else, what's the problem? Well, that's just part of it. Okay, so there are a couple of things you need to worry about. Not only do you need the 3% down payment at minimum, usually it's 5% for most lenders that you need for down payment, but there are prepaid expenses. So when you buy a house, you have to reimburse the seller for the taxes they've paid. You have to set up, you have to pay a year of property taxes. So we just build in an estimated year of taxes and a year of homeowners insurance. That goes into that prepaid expenses. So it's not a fee, but it's something that has to get paid. But if you're buying a house that's got taxes that are $2,000 a year, that's not such a big deal. If you're buying a house that's got taxes that are $6,000 a year, it's a big deal, right? That just changes how much money you need for closing by a lot. And then there are closing costs, which is what you have to do to pay the fees to go through the steps to get a mortgage in New York State, and in this case in Erie County. So these are the expenses for all of the different steps, like appraisals and New York State tax, title insurance, all that fun stuff. And then the prepaids, like I talked about, which are the property taxes and homeowners insurance. So it all adds up to be a nice little chunk of change. But there are ways that you can get help with that. So don't be discouraged, okay? Next, we're talking about private mortgage insurance. PMI is something that people pay when they are not putting 20% down when they buy the house. So the lender is actually taking out an insurance policy on you because the likelihood that the house could go into foreclosure statistically is pretty high. So lenders don't want to go out of business, right? Manage that risk a little bit. So less PMI, okay? And if you put down, you don't have to pay it at all for most programs. So, but that's part of the monthly mortgage payment that you're going to have to pay. So a lot of times people will say, well, I crunched the numbers, I have a mortgage calculator and everything, and this is what I can afford, but they're missing that piece, okay? And how much your private mortgage insurance, also we just call it PMI, has a lot to do with what your credit scores are. So the higher your credit scores, the better your PMI cost is going to be. If your credit scores are low, that's going to be expensive, okay? So that's just something to bear in mind. Types of loans. I'm not going to get too deep and heavy into all this stuff because when you talk to an actual lender, they're going to help you figure out what's best for you. So you don't have to go to a lender and say, I need this kind of loan, okay? What's best is you go to the lender and the lender looks at you and says, this is what you qualify for right now. And if you don't like it, this is what you can do to get some of these other better things. Okay, so that's kind of at least how I do it. Conventional loans are the goal right now because the market is so hot that it's very difficult to compete against all these other people in multiple offer situations with non-conventional loans. Non-conventional loans are the ones that are generally government backed, like FHA, which is, Federal Housing Administration, VA. VA mortgages, by the way, are the absolute best. So if you're a veteran or if you know somebody who is, tell them to look into getting a VA mortgage and don't let them get talked out of getting a different kind of a mortgage because VA is, unless they've got a gazillion dollars to put down on the price of the house, VA mortgages are the best, okay? And then USDA is for if you're buying out in the country. All right, so those are generally the types of mortgages that almost all lenders offer. But if you're talking to a really good lender, not mentioning any names, they have a lot of other things too. Okay, so we have, and most lenders offer at least one first-time homebuyer mortgage program. They're kind of required to because it's illegal not to. So most people offer one first-time homebuyer mortgage program. Okay, we happen to have, 6 to 8 different varieties at M&T on a given day. But basically, a first-time homebuyer mortgage is where we kind of tweak those mortgages that we talked about on the previous page, conventional, FHA, VA, USDA, and make them better for people who need some help. So you can get reduced down payment options. We have some programs where you could literally buy a house with 1% out of pocket expense. Okay, that's insane, right? You could buy a $150,000 house with $1,500. That's so amazing. Discount on closing costs or grant money to help you offset all of those fees we were talking about earlier, all that out of pocket you have to come up with, or discounted interest rate. Maybe your issue is your debt to income ratio, and that's preventing you from getting something. And so by taking advantage of a discounted interest rate, you can get into that house. You have enough savings, but you need that lower rate so the payment, so you'll qualify. So New York State also has excellent mortgage programs. They're called Sunny Mae mortgages. I love the different kinds of pronunciations on that. It's Sunny Mae, everybody, just so you know. So the State of New York Mortgage Agency has phenomenal first-time homebuyer mortgage programs. They have a ton of them. And they have ones with $20,000 in free renovation money on vacant properties. They have a brand new one that if you have pretty low income, you can get up to $30,000 now from New York State for down payment assistance, which is absolutely incredible. They have another one that is frequently the problem with Sunny Mae before was that their criteria was so tight, a lot of people didn't qualify for their mortgage. And so they had all these great programs to help people with low and moderate income. But if you have low and moderate income, it's really hard to have perfect credit, right? So it sort of didn't work a lot of the time. And so they have a program now for people who have less than perfect credit, or if they don't have credit. It's called Give Me Credit is the program. And so you want to find out about all of these things. So these programs are generally for people that are within income limits. So as Tracy had mentioned before, you saw a chart with income limits. They go up into, believe it or not, up to in the $80,000 range for some of the first-time homebuyer programs. And some of them are based on household size. So you might make it a decent chunk of change, but you have 8 kids, you're probably going to qualify. And also if you're buying in a target area, which is where, we're trying to encourage homeownership to make a stronger community. So it's likely you would qualify for some of these programs. And so it is wise to inquire with your lender about any of these programs. Reach out to any of the lenders that you're talking to. It's really smart to make sure that you speak with a loan officer, or they're also called mortgage loan originators. Make sure you're talking to somebody who's knowledgeable about this stuff. So you might have your mom's friend is a loan officer, and has been doing it for 20 years or something, but they might generally help people, who are buying $400,000 houses and always have 20% down. And they're not going to be able to help you with all of these, navigating all the different grants and programs that are out there. So make sure that you are inquiring about first-time homebuyer programs with any lender you speak with, to make sure you're talking to somebody that specializes in them so you get the best guidance. Okay, so put it all together. You've got the resources between the Old First Ward and Belmont and your lender And with all of this help, you can do this. All right, here are some free resources if you feel like doing some digging. This is sort of the disclaimer page to say that there's a lot of public information out there, and to make sure that you're making wise, smart decisions and protect yourself. And then here's just my contact information. And I believe these hyperlinks might actually, yeah, they actually link. So what do you know? You could go straight to the websites for M&T and all that kind of good stuff. So that's it for me. I'd ask for questions, but I'm not going to. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, guys.
Okay, I don't have a slide presentation, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the weatherization services with NHS South Buffalo. And just so you know that you can apply for weatherization services, you don't have to be in a house for a year if you just purchase it. So as long as you're living in the house and as long as you're not doing major renovation, you can apply for weatherization. And also they added to weatherization that if you had the weatherization before 2005, you can reapply for weatherization and we can reassess work that might be able to be done at your house, as long as you qualify for the program. So I just wanted to add that to what was being said today, and we've done weatherization services on here before. So you can contact us at 837-0071, and I'll be happy to speak to you. Thank you.
Yes, so if just a quick mention, so if you were interested in any of the programs from Neighborhood Housing Services of South Buffalo or from our office, the Old First Ward, we do have another video detailing those. So with that being said, I am just going to talk a little bit about the programs that we have available for first-time home buyers. So this is going to be starting with the down payment and closing cost assistance program. So this can provide funding for, as the name indicates, down payment and closing costs. So you do have to be a first-time home buyer, and that definition is not necessarily that you have never owned a home, but I believe it's within the past 3 years, and there are different criteria for that. So you do have to be under 80% of the area median income, and the home to be purchased must be located within the city of Buffalo. So the home also has to be in generally good condition. There can't be any major repairs that are needed to the property in order to be eligible. And in order to qualify for this program, it is required that you participate in first-time homebuyer counseling. That can be done through Belmont Housing Resources for Western New York or a couple of different organizations in the area. So the funding that would be available through that program would be up to $5,000 for those costs. And this would be available as a 0% interest loan with no repayment on that loan as long as the terms are met. And so the terms would be for 5 years. That would be the recapture period. So like I said, as long as those terms are met during that 5-year period, there wouldn't be a repayment. And there would be an associated lien with that program. So next is the 50/50 acquisition rehab program. So this program can actually be used at the time of purchase, thus the acquisition component, or afterwards if you have already owned the home for a while. But this program is for repairs, so it's not going to be purchase assistance, but it will be, if you were looking to purchase a home that is, needing some repairs. So again, you must be under 80% of the area median income. You have to be owning the home as your primary place of residence. So you have to be, intending to live in the home. So the lien period for that program is going to be 10 years. And again, you have to attend a home buyer training through a HUD certified housing counseling agency. And for both programs, you do have to qualify for a mortgage with a mortgage financing institution. And taxes and insurance must be paid through an escrow account. And again, if you do have any questions about those programs, you can contact our office. If you want to apply for those programs, contact our office. We'll be happy to answer any questions and help you apply. So if you have any questions about anything that was talked about in this info session, you can feel free to contact me. You can contact the presenters directly, and we will be happy to answer your questions. So thank you so much to everyone who presented, Neighborhood Housing Services, Belmont, and M&T Bank. We're very appreciative, and the information that you gave us was really great and really helpful. So thank you to everyone who presented, and thank you to everyone who joined and viewed the presentation.